UFC Vegas 70 is this weekend. We have a mediocre card name-wise, but some decent action in terms of the actual fights. In this video, we're going to go through all of my picks and reasons for them, top through bottom, and let you know which ones I feel the most confident with, which ones I think are some good underdogs to pick if you're a bettor, and yeah, let's get right into it. So the first fight of the night is Jose Johnson versus Garrett Armfield. This one was a decently hard fight to pick, to be honest, especially for the opening fight of the night. Just because if you look at their records, Jose Johnson, he has a Contender Series win in his last fight. This is his UFC debut. But I consider contender fights a pretty big warm-up to the UFC, not exactly a debut, but it does help me feel a little bit better about his UFC jitters that might happen in a normal debut. But before that, you know, he's fought some decent competition, nothing too crazy. He's mostly a KO guy, only 2 submissions on his record, 5 decisions, 8 KOs. If you look at Garrett Armfield's record, it's not too crazy impressive either, which is why it makes this sort of, you know, a difficult fight for me to pick. He lost his UFC debut against David Onama, which, I mean, David's a pretty good fighter, so I don't fault him too heavy for that. And aside that, you know, he's done pretty decent. He does have a couple other losses on his record, but nothing too crazy, and his competition that he's been fighting isn't exactly the worst. They're not, you know, garbage men. But I'm going to be picking Garrett in this one, even though Garrett is technically a little bit shorter. It's just Jose's coming up in weight, right? He usually fights at 135. This fight's going to be at 145. And if you go look at the people that Jose is actually fighting, they are lesser competition in my opinion, right? So I feel like Garrett, even though he did lose to a really, really skilled David Onama, he's had his UFC jitters. He fought some really tough competition. Yes, he did lose. I imagine he would hopefully learn a lesson from that and come back even better. And I think he will in this one. My pick is Garrett Armfield for the win. I think he's going to get it done in a decision. I don't see either of these guys finishing each other, though they both go for the KO. They're not really submission guys. I see that kind of nullifying it a little bit. Both of them are really going to want the win. I just think Garrett Armfield's going to be able to get this one done. Moving on up, we have Cowan versus Alin Perez, and I really hope I'm not mispronouncing that name. I apologize if she happens to see this video, and I am. Right off the bat, Haley, you know, she looks like she's got a lot of talent in this world to give. I'm just not exactly sure how she's going to do in this fight. The reason being, when you go look at her competition, it's embarrassing, right? She's beating people who are probably like part-time coaches at the YMCA in their free time, you know? Like she's not beating the best of people. She did beat somebody decent in her Contender Series victory, which, you know, does give her a chance, and I think that's why the betting odds are pretty close on this one. But if you go look at Alien, she lost her UFC debut against a decent fighter, not a crazy good fighter. But overall, she has fought the better competition, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. I had my pick as Alin Perez, right? But just going back and forward, looking at their records, it's really a tough call. This isn't one I would go heavy on from a betting perspective, but I am going to pick Alin Perez as my gut pick. I just feel like she's been through it. She has a loss recently. She's fought tougher competition, and Haley's probably not up to the task of what she's about to get into, though you never know. Maybe Alin just won't be good enough to beat her. I do think Alin will, though. That is going to be my pick for this one. Moving on up, you have Rafael Alves versus Nurullo Aliev. My pick on this one is going to be Rafael Alves. The reason for that is this dude has heart for days. If you guys missed his fight against Drew Dober, that was a crazy one. He took him to the 3rd round. He did lose the fight, but my God, that was a really, really good fight. You guys know how Drew Dober goes, right? And going to the 3rd round with him in a brutal war like that, I just saw so much heart in that fight. I really do think he's going to come back very strong. And on the other hand, you go look at his opponent, right? This guy, I mean, yes, he won a good Contender Series fight, and it was in the 1st round impressively. He did very good. But if you go look at the rest of his competition, again, this is how I judge a lot of my picks. He hasn't earned the credibility to me that his record makes it look like, right? It's the same thing as that fight last weekend against, who was that against? Let me check. There it is. It was Jamal Emmers who beat Kusin Ashkabab. Kusin was like 23-0 undefeated, but if you went through his record like I did last week, it was easy to predict against him. Jamal, I know it wasn't a crazy underdog pick. It was such a lock for me, in my opinion. Anytime you have these guys who are just joining the UFC, who have beaten up on absolute cans, which, to be fair, before the UFC, a lot of the competition isn't going to be exactly the best. It's just you can see a difference some of them. Some of them go through a little bit harder of a path, and maybe they've had a UFC fight before, whether they win or lost, right? If they win up against good competition, I just think that person's going to be more prepared for this moment, and that's why I would edge it in their favor. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with this one. I believe Rafael Alves is a pretty big underdog. Let me double check. Yeah, plus 154 on Bet Online. So I would take Rafael Alves in this one. I see Nurullo just not being up for the heart that Rafael is going to put on him. So Rafael Alves got my pick on this one. I absolutely love watching this guy fight. I know he hasn't been the best his whole career, but that last one, it earned me as a fan, and I think this guy's going to be able to put it on him. I think he's going to just outwork him, give him more than he's ever had before, and I think he's going to win. Moving on up the card, you have Joe Solecki versus Carl Deaton. This one is a massive favorite for Joe Solecki. Carl's coming up in weight class. Carl isn't the best fighter. Joe's not, I mean, his record isn't that great. He's a big sub guy. Carl has a lot of subs as well. Joe subs some pretty good competition. Also a couple decisions as well against good competition. I obviously think Joe Solecki is going to win this. I don't see Carl getting an upset, though at minus 600 or whatever it is, you're not going to want to touch it. Maybe you go under 1.5, though. I mean, if you go look at Joe's record, he's gone above 1.5 quite a lot of times as well. But there's quite a lot of times he's finished guys in the first round, so wouldn't be too bad of a bet. I'd probably take the under 1.5 on this one, just seeing how the other guy is decent at submissions, which tells me he's going to want to engage in that game. But he's going to be undersized, and he's going to not be as good at it. So I just see Joe getting it done pretty easy. But I could be wrong. Maybe they nullify it and it goes to a decision. I still think Joe wins that way. Moving on up the card, you have O'Day Osbourne versus Charles Johnson. And I believe O'Day is the favorite in this one. No, okay, O'Day is the underdog. Okay, my pick for this one is Charles Johnson. I want to get that out right away. The reason for it, if you go look at their records, Charles Johnson is the bigger man. And if you look at his last fights, he's got a win against Jimmy Flick. He's got a win against Zalaz Zumablov. I'm not going to pretend I don't know that fighter. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan. I don't know that fighter. But the only loss recently was to Muhammad Bukayev, and that guy is a wizard of grappling and just a fighter in general. That guy, he's very young. I'm sure many of you know him already. Muhammad Bukayev, a loss to him on your record only last year. I don't take any shame in that. I don't think many fighters would take any shame in that. I think he beats a lot of his division right now. So if you take that, then you have Charles being the bigger man, right? Going up against O'Day, who, I mean, if he doesn't finish them in the first round, and even sometimes he does get finished himself in the first round, he's probably not going to win the fight. And he's also coming off a loss as well. So this is going to be a decent scrap. I predict O'Day trying to play it a little more safe because he's coming off a loss. Charles putting on the pressure, putting on the pace, using his size to his advantage. And I see Charles getting this done. He's a great fighter. My pick is Charles Johnson. Let's see the odds there. Yeah, plus 150. No, minus 148 for Charles Johnson. So the bookies definitely agree with me on this. And yeah, I think that's the right call. Moving on up, we have Jordan Leavitt versus Victor Martinez. So my pick for this one's going to be Jordan Leavitt. I know you technically pronounce it Levi, but I'm kind of like Chael in the way that I'm just pretty bad at pronouncing names. I'm sure you'll realize that over time. But Jordan Leavitt, I know he lost his fight to Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett, after his fight with Jared Gordon, people are saying he's not all that good. He is a decent grappler. I can see how he was able to nullify Jordan's grappling. And then you have Jordan taking on somebody who's a freaking freight train of a striker, not a grappler really at all. Hasn't fought many good grapplers. In fact, he's done a lot of kickboxing matches leading up to this, right? So you look at that. He has one Contender Series win that went to decision. He is a really exciting fighter to watch, and he is a good striker. But I think that he's just going to be a little too willing to get, into range with Jordan. And Jordan's not going to play that game with a talented striker. Jordan lost to Paddy because Paddy's a good grappler. I don't see Victor being, he's not shown to be a good grappler at this point, and I don't think he'll be able to nullify it. I think Jordan Leavitt's going to get this one done. It's pretty much a pick'ems fight though, so not too bad. You could definitely see some good action on that one. Moving on up, we have Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Gabriella Fernandes Hermogenes. Fellow Canadian over here for Jasmine, so I like that. That always, gets my heart going a little bit. I always love seeing a fellow Canadian. This one was a difficult one for me to pick. I'm going to look to my notes here because I had a couple things I wrote down for them. The reason I'm picking Jasmine in this one is she's already had a UFC fight. Yes, she did lose it, but she also won, her Contender Series fight and the UFC fight prior to that. So she has some good experience. She beat Kay Hansen, who had a lot of smoke coming into that fight. Made it look pretty damn easy too. She's a decent fighter. She's not bad at all. Gabriella, her opponent, has shown to be pretty good. But again, I go back to that competition level that she's fought. She has a lot of great wins. Her only loss is to Maria Silva, and Maria's pretty good, so there's no shame in that. She's not a bad fighter, honestly. This is a hard one to pick, but I would go Jasmine again. I always just give the edge to who's fought the better fighters on when skill seems to be relatively equal. Moving on up, we have Erick Gonzalez versus Trevor Peek. I'm going to be going with Trevor Peek on this one. He's coming off a nice win on the Contender Series, a second round finish via TKO, of course. Not too bad at all. His record is pretty good. He's fought decent competition as well. Erick Gonzalez, on the other hand, you know, he's been in the UFC for 2 fights now. He's lost both of them in the first and second round. Not by bad competition, right? He lost to Jim Miller. He lost to Terrence McKinney. Not too much shame in those either, right? So I don't judge him too hard on that. And a lot of his other losses that he has on his record, you know, they're kind of scattered throughout with a few wins in between, right? The reason I'm picking Trevor in this one is I just think after watching footage, Erick Gonzalez is a little bit more there to be hit. He puts himself out there. That's how he gets his wins as well. But Trevor's a good striker, a really good striker. And I think Trevor's going to be able to catch him, put him down. He's been finished before, Erick, so I think this will fall under that. He's going to go 3 losses in the UFC. If I'm right, and he'll probably get cut, which is a shame. He's not too bad of a fighter when you watch him fight. I see a striking match, and I see Trevor winning. Moving on up, we have Mike Malott versus Yohan Lainesse, another Canadian in this matchup. This one's really tough for me. Again, I actually really like Mike Malott. I didn't even know of him before his Mickey Gall fight, his last fight. But this dude's got heart. And this dude can bang, dude. This guy can go for it, and he can put a pace on people. So he's got a lot of first-round finishes on his record. I'd be really scared to watch him go later. I just think that he can do it. He seems like he's got the heart. He seems like he's got the work ethic to make sure he's in shape. And I know Yohan Lainesse is a damn good fighter. I'm not sleeping on him. I think this is going to be a freaking amazing fight, potentially fight of the night. But I would edge it to Mike Malott just because of my Canadian biasness, I guess. But if I had to look at it with that removed, they're both relatively the same age, exact same height. They're both strikers. They're both good. Arguably, Yohan is a little bit better technically. I guess, I don't know, gun to my head, I might pick Yohan, but my official pick is going to be Mike Malott. I think he's going to get this one done, and he's going to kind of represent Canada for us a little bit. So I'm going Mike Malott. You got this. I want to see the odds on this one. Mike Malott, minus 210. Okay, so it looks like the bookies are agreeing with me on that one. Let's hope that we're right. Moving on up, we're almost getting towards the main event. We're on the main card now, at least. We got Tatiana Suarez versus Martinez de la Rosa. I'm not going to get too much detail on this one. It's an obvious pick. I'm going to be going with Tatiana Suarez. Montana is just not a great fighter at all. She's on the downward trajectory in her career. Tatiana rather is undefeated. And she's going to go 9-0 in this one pretty easily. And yeah, there's not much else I really need to say for that one. Moving on up, we have Augusto Sakai versus Don'Tale Mayes. And this is one that when I originally looked at it, right, I thought Augusto Sakai might be the better pick. He's got better name value, which means nothing, but that was the reason I gravitated towards that, right? But then you look at his record. Augusto Sakai lost to Sergey Spivak, no shame. Tai Tuivasa, no shame. Jairzinho Rosenstruck, no shame. Alistair Overeem, no shame. Those are his last 4 fights. All of them by KO, right? So there's not really shame in the people that he's losing to, although he did lose to Sergey by KO, and he's mostly a grappler. But either way, he's not losing to bad opponents, right? But the way he lost, as heavyweights usually do lose, I suppose. But 4 KOs or TKOs in a row, man, that's got to affect your chin. And it's been 1 in 2020, 2 in 2021, 1 in 2022. That's tough to really rebound from, and mentally, what does that do to you when you're going to a fight and you've lost your last 4, right? He definitely needs it. There's no doubt that he's going to want to go in there and win. Like, there's no doubt, right? I don't know. I just don't see his chin holding up in this one. I think Don'Tale Mayes will get it done. You know, on the other hand, Don'Tale Mayes, he had a no contest in his last fight, 2 wins, and then a loss from Rodrigo Nascimento and Cyril Gane. So, you know, there's not too much shame in this Cyril Gane one. I'm actually not familiar with Rodrigo. But either way, I'm going to have to go against the person who's shown to not have a chin, and it's fucking heavyweight. So, I mean, it's kind of important to have a chin in that division, right? So I'm going Don'Tale Mayes on this one. I wonder what the bookies are thinking. Don'Tale Mayes, slight underdog, okay? Because bookies can easily, like, anytime there's a big name that's going to sway the odds a little bit, don't fall for that. I think Don'Tale Mayes gets this one done. Moving on up to the co-main event. Finally a card that I actually know both. I mean, I know both fighters on a few of them, but I like both fighters, I should say, right? I'm fans of both these guys. I like Brendan Allen. I like Andre Muniz. Unfortunately for Brendan Allen, he's going to get his cheeks clapped in this one. Andre Muniz is a goddamn beast in the grappling department, and I see Brendan Allen being willing to engage in the grappling department, which is going to be his downfall. He's probably going to try and strike a little bit, but whether or not he tries to strike or doesn't want to engage in grappling, which now that I think about it a bit more, I probably am wrong. He's probably not going to try to engage. Andre Muniz is going to get that sub, man. He's a fucking wizard. You don't want to get in the cage with him. And yeah, no, he's Andre Muniz has got this one. Brendan Allen's a great fighter. He really is. But Andre Muniz is he is that guy. So only minus 230 for Andre. I'm surprised it's not even a little more. He's a strong confidence pick in that one, Andre Muniz. And moving on up to the main event, the last main event before the next one is Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane, so that's something to be really excited about, is Ryan Spann versus Nikita Krylov. Now this is an interesting one for me just because I don't put much weight at all in Ryan Spann's last victory against Dominic Reyes. I mean, you could watch that fight as soon as the bell started and know that Dominic Reyes is going to get fucked up. Like the way he was going around, he looked slow, his chin was in the air to get hit, and you know that with that guy, lately at least, anytime he gets hit hard, he's going to go down, right? It kind of, you know, he had a good chin in the Jon Jones fight, and ever since then it's really been weaker and weaker and weaker. And so yeah, point B, I don't want to just shit on Dominic Reyes. Point being, I mean, I do want to shit. He deserves it. But anyway, Ryan Spann, don't put too much in that one. But aside from that, the man's good. The man is good. The man has power in his hands. That's undeniable. He's a big boy. He hits hard. And more importantly, what I like is he's got good wrestling. He's got good submission game, which is what I'm banking on him to use to win this fight. And you know, when you have a well-rounded guy like that, light heavyweight who can sub, he can wrestle, and he can swing and bang, hard to deal with, right? So he is going up against a good fighter in Nikita Krylov, a good submission artist with 15 submissions, 12 KOs on his record. You don't want to disregard him in that category. I just see him being a little bit overwhelmed with the size advantage that Ryan Spann has, the better wrestling in my opinion that Ryan Spann has. He's going to take a couple big shots, going to get into a little bit of a grappling engagement, and I'm banking on Ryan Spann getting that one and taking it as the underdog, either by submission, which is less likely, probably by wrestle hump decision, relatively boring wrestle hump decision. Although it is 5 rounds, it's interesting. I still see it. I see it being a little bit back and forward, but Ryan Spann getting the edge in this one. I'd love to hear what you guys think of your picks for this card. Let me know in the comment section down below what you agree with, what you don't agree with. I'm going to have a betting focused video come out on Friday, so you guys can watch that before you get your bets in. I'll show you which ones I'm doing as well. We have one more of these cards to get through before Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be an amazing fight. I think Jon Jones gets that one, but I have a whole prediction video coming out on that next week, so don't you worry about that. Let's enjoy this one for now. I know there's not big name value, but there should be some okay fights. Hopefully my predictions hold up strong. Last week I did pretty good. Feeling pretty confident about this one too. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys for watching and liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.